Hello once again, people, and welcome to something entirely different. This time around, we're going to be checking out Dark Hour. Basically, it's another commercial add-on made in '96 around the exact same time as Q2. A lot of these add-ons were actually released on November in '96. So there's a lot of overlap in when exactly things were made and when they came out and whatnot like that. But that's not really what we care about. We just care about checking out these little commercial add-ons and finally getting to play them after 20 years. um, Q2, I've kind of already checked out the entirety of it and shown it on Quake Guy, but I decided I'm going to do a reflection on it and whatnot, since first time around I didn't give any commentary or anything. So just like that time, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to show some things you didn't get to see on that side because I didn't really know how to showcase them. Um, that's kind of the exact thing about making for the wiki or whatnot is the fact that I'm married that there's a lot of stuff that's I just do not know how to easily showcase it because the fact that merit needs to be organized, it needs to be in a set place, and some of the stuff is just absolute randomness. It's just kind of thrown about wherever, and so it's how exactly do we display that this is a thing? Especially since most people aren't ever going to be able to see this thing otherwise. Yeah, this is where this kind of can be useful because it can show a few things that over there really I couldn't be able to really showcase. Plus, back then I didn't have the capabilities I do now in regards to recording things, in regards to showcasing things. It was a very different atmosphere. I know it's weird to say that after 2 years or so, but yeah, really things have drastically changed, and I believe they still will drastically change in the future. I don't expect 2 years from now to really be looking back and have the similar setup. I guess that's one of the biggest flaws of being an LPer. Your new stuff is always going to have better quality than your old stuff. And the problem is that your old stuff is kind of also focuses on different things or whatnot. I mean, you could always go back and whatnot and reflect on the same things, but then it gets repetitive. So yeah, it kind of gets a weird situation. Um. Anyway, one thing I should announce before I actually start this is the fact of the matter that I'm actually planning on getting a sound upgrade. I know for the last 2 years or something like that, I've been basically rocking out these headphones, using these Turbo Beach Elite 800s, and basically that's been my setup. Just basically talking to these headsets and calling it a day. Um, I tested it out with some people and whatnot. They said it was just as good as my old setup. They said there really wasn't any differences or whatnot. And so I figured for convenience or whatnot, plus the fact that the old microphone relied on a sound card, which really was kind of a pain to use at the time because my case didn't really be wasn't able to fit much. Yeah, I kind of had the smaller case. So I kind of ended up getting rid of that setup and decided to go more all out on the um just again one headset and calling it a day. um, but yeah, I think one of the biggest flaws with this setup right now is the fact that my audio quality. It's decent enough, I believe. Nobody has ever said anything different. Everyone's been able to hear me fine. It doesn't seem like I've ever had a single complaint with these headsets. And that's good. But at the same time, I figure well, why not we try something better and see exactly how it sounds? You don't realize how bad something is until you try something else. So I believe I'm going to be experimenting around in just a little bit of time. I've already ordered them and just kind of waiting for them to get here. But it's the weekend. And so basically I want to not just be sitting here like an idiot all weekend without really anything to do. So instead of just not doing anything, we're going to start Dark Hour. And I'm going to go through this and play some more of that. So, yeah, there might be a change in audio quality as we go through this. I'm sorry about the first half of it, or whatever it is, going to be somewhat different than how it will change out later, if it does turn out to be better. But that's kind of the luck of the draw. um, like I said, it's kind of the idea of always improving, always doing something. So And plus, it wouldn't be like unbearable to watch as far as I figure. Um, it just is like a slight oomph and quality or whatnot, and that's really the refinement we can have. I'm starting to experiment with a lot of technology improvements and whatnot, so I'm expecting a lot more come around like 2017. That's going to be like a big year for like building up my computer to make it really like crazy. So we'll see what we have here, what exactly we can pull off, and if we can get some more things just to make the experience even better. But for the time being, I just want to announce that there is indeed a sound upgrade coming your way, possibly. Like I said, it depends on how exactly the sound sounds, if it actually is better or even as decent. Um, I don't want something that kind of ruins the whole experience. So let's see here. Today we're going to be doing Dark Hour, as I was trying to say before. And the first thing I should mention about Dark Hour is that it's better quality than Q2, even though both are made by one's made by MicroStar, and I believe this one's Microforum. I think it is. I believe it's Microforum. Yep, it is. Just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to say the wrong company. But yeah, Microforum versus MicroStar. It's really weird that all these micro companies were making it. Microforum is just as obscure as MicroStar was, but the difference is that MicroStar was more of a publisher as far as I'm aware. Honestly, I don't even know who designed Q2. They don't really give like many credits. And it's not real. Of course, nobody covers it on the internet. The internet's like totally blank on anything about Q2. Good luck finding like any information whatsoever besides what I've already found. Um, that's kind of the problem, is that Q2 is a very obscure pack that nobody cares about, and so nobody puts any info about it. And so that's kind of the way it is. It's pretty much, the bottom of the barrel, totally obscure stuff. Everyone knows, like, like Scourge of Armagon and all that stuff, what it contains and who made what and all that, but nobody can tell you anything about Q2, just because nobody likes Q2. So let us talk Dark Hour. Dark Hour I should say right off the front of the face, is not as bad at all as Q2 was. Um, Q2 is pretty much one of the worst things you could play for like an add-on, mainly because it is pretty much all the same looking levels, and there's really no variety. There's no detailing involved, and so everything looks exactly the same. Um, Everything else at least adds some detailing of some sort, so that way you can at least tell it's a different level. And I think that's why, like, these are a lot better than that. Plus the fact of the matter that usually these have more than 2 textures per level. In fact, there's some Dark Hour levels that will have, like, I don't know, like 10, 12 textures? Yeah, it's a lot more insane in comparison when you put it side by side with Q2. Then you add the fact that I believe they've, like, added some differences in lighting. And yeah, it's a lot better of a pack, honestly. All around, really hard to explain and like point out like everything off the in front of my face, but yeah, everything is pretty much better about this pack in comparison to Q2. If you had to put them face to face, there's no competition. Even though Dark Hour only has about like 22 levels. Dark Hour only has like a fifth of the levels of Q2, but because Q2 is just basically a bunch of quantity of equality, Dark Hour, of course, has better quality. Um, that said, we should also mention some other little details about Dark Hour before I really start and get into all the levels and start covering everything. Um, so yeah, let's see here. Dark Hour is basically it's kind of like an interesting pack. I don't know how much people have made what they made. Honestly, I haven't seen like any evidence that says they stole anything outright. But at the same time, they take credit for making them, and I'm not seeing anything that proves they didn't make them. So I guess you could believe it, but the problem is that there's so little information, like stuff from the late 90s. Um, like a lot of websites that used to have Quake levels are gone. So therefore it becomes quite hard to track it. Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest flaws while trying to cover like an old school game like Quake. You lose a lot of the content that used to be there because especially with Gamespy going down. I mean, if there was one game that really was tied to Gamespy, it was probably Quake. Quake was the original game on Gamespy and is the reason for basically Gamespy's popularity in the first place. So, yeah, with basically Gamespy gone, that means we basically lost a massive horde of Quake-based levels that probably have been gone from history. We probably just lost like a big chunk. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Hopefully somebody out there somewhere has archived them, but I doubt it because honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to people's interest and want to archive certain levels. And so yeah, that's kind of the big thing is that you want to believe everything on the internet's permanent. You want to believe everything everywhere is honestly permanent. But when it comes to computers in general, I don't believe there is actually a permanence. Um, Things kind of come and go and disappear eventually. And if there's really evidence of that, it's the whole thing with Gamespy that happened a few years ago. That alone showed like hundreds upon hundreds of files just disappearing from history. Um, and you take that and you apply that to a lot of different websites and whatnot that have gone under that used to be popular. Look at GeoCities. GeoCities used to be pretty much one of the biggest websites for like anyone who wanted to like have their own custom web page. There was thousands upon thousands of them, probably dedicated to like people's custom Quake levels. They probably throw like a couple Quake levels or something up there and say, "These are my few levels." We've lost all that. We lost hundreds upon hundreds of GeoCity sites. And so I guess that's the biggest problem that's kind of depressing is the fact that we lose our ability to do that. And then you say with certain technologies going away, like you say with like VQuake or whatnot, you can't play that on modern hardware because the fact of the matter, very right cards are no longer in production. And while most things are emulated, um, you can see that certain times there's things that have been lacking compatibility. Look at like 16-bit applications with 64-bit Windows. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and really the best solution we have is to kind of create like an emulated version of Windows inside the 64-bit, which does work, I guess. But like I said, it's just the fact of the matter that it almost becomes harder and harder to emulate the old stuff as time ages. And it feels like as we keep going forward, we may eventually come to a point where we're not able to really see the old stuff. And it's weird because you can always read an old book. You can always watch an old movie. Um, it may be very, very hard to find that old DVD in the first place, but when you get it, it's not going to say, spit it out and say, you can't watch this movie. Even if it's on, like VHS or so. I believe they're still making VHS things. Um, but yeah, no, I don't think really like usually all those stuff, even like the more obscure things, have been converted to digital. There's probably like I don't know 5 minutes enough films or whatever that have been converted to digital format out there, just to basically retain that compatibility. But yet it feels like games almost get the short end of the stick sometimes. It feels like they almost like are not made to last as much. It's a weird thing. Um, it might not be as bad as I'm saying because, like I said, we do have like emulators for most old consoles. We do have virtual software, whatnot. So there still is a lot of like ways to get stuff back. I think like though the biggest thing of loss is probably the internet in general because we do have archive sites, but honestly, trying to get files off them is rather spotty. There's like rarely will you actually get files that you really want off them. Anyway, I've gotten really derailed from my talk of whatchamacallit, Dark Hour. But yeah, it's one reason that basically I kind of had to like cover it is because the fact of the matter is this might be our biggest window to really see stuff that was around in '96. I haven't actually bothered covering just custom levels by themselves. I eventually plan to, but the fact of the matter is I'm not exactly sure how well archived this stuff is. Doom World is a place that's been active forever, has a bunch of stuff kept on there, and basically has kept it throughout the history. Um, but the Quake equivalent, which would have been like Gamespy, is gone. So with that in mind, we might have lost a lot of our history. So it's rather weird, but yeah, it's like a lot of history just totally disappeared when Gamespy went down. And therefore, the best way to find old school history might be through these add on packs and what exactly they have. Because who knows, maybe these are totally ripped levels that were stolen from the internet. While that is, a pretty terrible, heinous act to do in the first place, um, at least the good news is that means they're totally archived in a way that you basically could get a CD and use. And now it's like you can't get them any other way. So in a way, I almost am happy that we have some of these shovelware packs that stole things from the internet, because the fact of the matter is, it's the only way you can get them now. So yeah, it's a weird double-edged sword. Whereby it was terrible back then that they were doing these acts, but from an archivist perspective, it's almost a more permanent solution than say just leaving it on the internet for everyone to download. So it's rather weird, but that's almost the interesting thing about shovelware. And it's almost a shame that we've lost shovelware because that means that now in the future, say like a more modern game, say like people made stuff for Call of Duty or something like that, that stuff's going to disappear. 20 years later, whenever the main Call of Duty sites go down, nobody's going to be able to play those custom packs. Do they even have custom maps for it? I believe so. I honestly don't know editing capabilities, that stuff. Um, but I would say, it really applies to like any modern game or so. Um, you always be able to maybe play the old game itself, but playing the custom based stuff that people made might become harder with time, especially if the websites for it go down that you used to download it from. And so that's one of the shames is that nothing on the internet is permanent. Anyway, let's actually get to a bit more positive things. Let's talk about Dark Hour. And the fact of the matter that it is an interesting pack. Um, it has, like I said, 22 levels, and out of these 22 levels, I want to say almost all of them, besides like a select few, are single player based. Which is very weird when you think in the logic of how Quake was, even back in '96. The big popularity of Quake was its multiplayer on being able to play death matches. And so seeing an add-on come out that is mostly focused on the single player campaign is rather weird. Um, it's almost one of the reasons why I like this pack over like more popular packs that we'll be talking about later. Because the fact of the matter is, with Dark Hour, you're getting a good number of single player levels of a decent quality, something that's better than the um, exact almost duplicate nature of Q2. Um, it isn't the most refined stuff, no, not at all, but it is better than Q2. You could tell it's definitely different stuff. And the fact of the matter is, that's all single player based. So we don't have to like look at a bunch of multiplayer levels and be like, yay, multiplayer. All this stuff is useless now. Once again, like I said, for Quake historian purposes, it's great that we also could see the multiplayer levels. That's the main reason I cover them here. Because I like covering really everything and seeing everything there is to see. Um, the one thing I really am not interested in is really like the deathmatch spawn versions and all that. It feels like honestly it just kind of gets redundant. If I'm not doing it for the wiki or whatnot. So that's why I haven't really bothered with that. But everything else, I like to be a historian for and show off and say, this was a thing. Do you like this thing? It was a concept, an idea. It was once a thing somebody somewhere might have actually played. and probably torture themselves with, much like we are doing now. But yeah. So as I've been trying to say, Dark Hour is an improvement to Q2 in a lot of ways. Um, and I feel is pretty much a decent pack. It's definitely nothing of like the highest quality. It's not going to be anything like the original game, but it's recognizable, and it has gotten rid of a lot of the problems that Q2 had. I don't even believe it has like a bunch of random enemies facing one direction. Um, I think they actually put a bit more effort into it. Anyway, let's actually talk about stuff, because this is really like the intro video to Dark Hour, and so I really should talk a bit more besides Dark Hour and talk at a black screen and all that. So we have like a bunch of files on this CD. We basically have like a text folder with like a bunch of files or so that basically tell you like different things. It gives you lots of tips to basically do things. Tells you can do a random act of kindness for some reason. And yeah, basically it tells you like all these nice little tips to like survive. It tells you different servers to basically be able to load up and actually do things with people. It tells you like, how to load up Dark Hour levels. There's things on how to get editors. There's things um there's things that basically tell you the console commands, websites to go to for Dark Hour. There's lots of stuff in here that really is like heavily detailed in comparison to Q2, where there was barely any documentation besides loaded up in Windows 95. One thing I definitely like about Dark Hour in comparison is definitely the documentation. There's a lot. Um, Now, the one thing I should say is a lot of it is pretty useless. A lot of the documentation has nothing to do with Dark Hour more than just Quake in general. And so you end up not really getting many details about Dark Hour. Honestly, a lot of the stuff is just how to play Quake, stuff you can do in Quake itself, which is nice for the newbie, but like I said, it really would be interesting to see a bit more dedicated Dark Hour. Um, I digress, and it is pretty interesting to see stuff. Anyway, with all that in mind, let's actually get to the main thing I should actually show off, which is the loader. The loader is basically the application. So if you remember like Q2, when we basically played Q2, the whole thing about Q2 was that we had to load up like a DOS loader. We had basically single player or multiplayer. You could press like M, you could switch to multiplayer variants. Otherwise you'd be in single player mode and could just wander through aimlessly. Other than that, it was basically just load up a level, play it. You have to exit, get back to the menu, and then select another level. Um, but the big difference between Dark Hour and Q2 that I should talk about is that Dark Hour is a Windows-based atmosphere. Yes, that's very, very weird after what we just went through. But yeah, Dark Hour is loadable in Windows. I have the Dark Hour thing right now, and I can actually just double click it and it'll load up fine on Windows. Now, it is a very old Windows program, so the big thing about it is that it runs in a very small window. I've actually like blown it up so that way you guys can actually see a nice full screen resolution as an output, a nice 1440p output. For something that's a really small window, for me, it's like it's moderately sized. It's enough that I can actually click around to do stuff. I've seen like worse when it comes to like the Unreal betas, some of them, and stuff like that. So it's definitely not the worst window out there, but it definitely is not like a nice full screen resolution based thing. Um, but it works. It gets the job done, and pretty much at the end of the day is all that really matters. Is just to use the loader to do what you need to do. Anyway, let's actually show you this thing. And that's Microforum. As you see, one thing you'll notice about this, in comparison to the previous one of Q2, is the usage of custom sounds. That's only used in the loader. For some reason, Dark Hour has different sounds, but they didn't change anything in the actual game. It's just changed in the menus. But in the menus, you have some sound effects, which is really interesting after the very silent, simplistic nature of DOSBots. So yeah, this is like a slightly improved thing in comparison to Days of That. If you notice, we have a bunch more options. Most of them are pretty useless to us, but they're there. So if you notice, first off the bat, we have a button to exit the whole thing, which is nice. We also have an About Dark Hour, which tells you a lot of important stuff about who produced it or whatnot. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm noticing, it's not actually showing me the different menus. I wonder if I actually have to, like, please don't tell me I actually have to show you, like, each one of these. So, like, I have to, like, add another whole window display. Let's see here. Maybe if I... 1 second, people. I have to fight with this thing, but I believe... Yeah, see, I have... It actually comes out as, like, multiple windows. Each is, like, their own screenshot, apparently. So, yeah, it's basically loaded from a central loader, which you just saw, so I'm not really going to jump back to that one. But, yeah, basically each one of these is its own weird loader, and because of that, it's a really annoying way when trying to, like, actually record this and show you guys. Because it's just a bunch of transition windows. Yeah, I honestly don't really get why it's this way. I guess it was a very simplistic way of doing it. But this is version 1.0. I don't know if there was ever another version. We have producers, project managers, all these other people that did stuff. Yeah, look at that. We have details. We have your place to call them. But we have people we could point to and blame for making these levels. Anyway, one thing I should say about this, Dark Hour is a pretty disliked pack. Much like Q2, it gets a lot of unanimous hate. It is a bit more controversial than like Q2 was, especially the loader. People like the loader. They feel the loader is high quality. But most people will agree that the actual levels themselves weren't the best. I guess these people really didn't have like Q2 to compare it to and be like, oh my god, what am I playing? Oh my god! So yeah, you basically see, the oddest thing here is that we have a Quake tip of the day, which tells us a tip that we can do. You know, be careful not to shoot something with a rocket launcher. It has unlimited range and you might kill yourself with it! Oh, brilliant! Oh, wow. Okay, let's load up help. Oh, look, and even to show you help, I need to, like, change the menu. Well, this is terrible. I don't like this. Okay, so here we are in the help screen. Yeah, this is help. This is what happens when we click help. What is this? Why is this a thing? I mean, look at this. Pair everywhere. It's like they had problems with the formatting or something. And so we end up, instead of actually having like a nice looking GUI, we have a bunch of text that basically is just like horrible, unformatted text here. We basically see a bunch of code you have to like dig through just to read what it's trying to say. Isn't that terrible? Yeah, I honestly... It basically, you could look through all this and actually like figure out what everything says, but it's just annoying. It's really a pain in the butt to even look at. Oh, ain't that brilliant? Oh look, we actually found a way to actually get help to work. Okay. Wait a minute. How did we get it to be formatted? I think this actually fixed it, didn't it? Yeah, I think we fixed it by clicking again. Okay, well that's just a bug. Yeah, now it's formatted correctly. I honestly don't know what happened there. So yeah, if you have a problem with it being like formatted incorrectly, click the same button again and it fixes it. I have no idea why this is a problem, but yeah, here's evidence that it's funky like that. I don't get it. But Q2! Well, Dark Hour! We're not in Q2 anymore. And yeah, you want a bunch of help? There's your help. You're welcome. Yeah, there's actually like no real manual with this thing, so you get every bit of help through these screens. Okay, that's help. We had a button here to go to help directly, but we don't need that. Okay, web editors. As you see, this is considered in the same area as the other one, and these are all the different websites you could go to at the time. Yeah, you could really use this to like hunt up like old school stuff, I guess. I think all these are like the old school editors. But yeah, these were all websites that you could go to and like check out stuff and see stuff. So yeah, I doubt really like half of these work anymore. I doubt like any of them actually work. You'd probably have to like dig up in archives and see if you could get anything from them. It'd probably be a pain in the butt. Like I said, you can even see some GeoCities in there. Yay! That's totally gone. But yeah, hopefully something in here actually works. No idea, but they're there. Old school stuff. Look at that. Maybe eventually there'll be a use for it. Who knows? Maybe one of them's actually well archived and has some Quake files. That would be nice, right? We do have 2 loaders here, basically for getting the levels. But before we can get to that, we also have the story. Yes, Dark Hour has a story, much like Q2 did. But instead of how it did it in Q2, where I just read it off, we have a full-out briefing room. So let's do that. Okay, and it doesn't actually show it, so I'm gonna have to like change the display. So 1 second, people. Listen to that for a second. There we are. You're welcome. What I'm about to tell you is of an extremely delicate and confidential nature. This is regarding our standards against our enemy, Quake. For months, our soldiers have been laid to waste by the devastating forces of Quake. But this is nothing new to you. What you don't know is that many of those who have been presumed dead are still alive in the Quake homeworld and held as prisoners of war, awaiting execution. A few days ago, one of our men escaped and had a grim report for me. Our enemy has set up combat arenas and then put our soldiers together, instigating a fight to the death. This is the sick form of execution. They're entertained that we die by our own hands. The sad reality is that as happy as we speak, brother is killing brother and friend is killing friend. Difficult to believe as is, it's true. The rules are they don't fight each other, and all are executed by Quake. I was told that this form of execution is extremely painful. After each deathmatch is finished, there are only 1 man left standing. That man lives for at least 1 more day, but even he must fight again. Those guys have used fear and distrust to darken the hearts of our soldiers. If word got out of this, it would destroy the morale of all our troops. I'm counting your discretion on this matter. You've been chosen for this mission not only because of your combat skills, but because of your leadership. I'm trusting you to go into the Quake homeworld and help our men return back to Earth. Be careful, many of them are turned to the dark side and most likely trigger happy. On this mission, you might meet some soldiers who might be persuaded to return to our side. I want you to use words to persuade them to work as a team in an escape effort. Do not fire under any circumstances unless you have no choice, and even then use your minimal force. You can try to bring back as many soldiers as you can, alive. They'll be needed to fight on your side in future battles. Beware of treachery. Someone might pretend to be on your side until you trust them enough to turn your back. If you trust us an act of weakness and backstab as an act of strength. You have to use instinct to know who's on your side and who is not. To survive this mission, you must learn how to think like both an officer and a scoundrel. The codename for this mission is Dark Hour. Good luck. So yeah, look at that. We have Arnold Schwarzenegger for some reason. Wait a minute, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Oh my god, people, we're playing as Arnold Schwarzenegger! Look at that! Look at that picture right there! That's Arnold Schwarzenegger! Also going back to Dark Hour main screen, but you guys get to still see the picture because, well, it doesn't exactly load screens easily here. So yeah, you get to see Arnold Schwarzenegger all his glory. I'm gonna kick some alien butt. I have no idea how to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, but let's see here. So basically, the story is simple. Deathmatch. Deathmatch is somehow integrated with the story, and Quake is forcing people to fight in arenas. Um, but then there's also a thing about if you go in, you basically gotta go in there and save people. And you need to find people who will be persuaded to return to your side and use negotiation tactics to deal with them. What an amazing and complex idea! We have AI that you can kill and those that you're not supposed to kill. Those that you basically talk with and try and convince to come to your side and you can work with. But there also is a betrayal part of their AI that may cause them to betray you. So you have to constantly be on guard with those NPCs around you. What an amazing, intricate, and complex idea that's totally different from the original game. Yeah, nah. Dark Hour doesn't do any of that complexity stuff. Um, yeah, ignore totally the storyline here. The storyline's probably one of the worst things about Dark Hour because it builds you up so much because it's like it's basically almost promising all these complex AI mechanics. It's basically saying like I guess what they're basically trying to subtly hint at here is basically like co-op mode and probably like team mode, but then how are those like soldiers that were convinced to turn you aside? It's a bit weird. And like I said, it basically the way it's basically said in the story almost implies that you're just gonna run into them as you're playing the single player game. Yeah, you'll find soldiers that you can actually return to your side, and you'll be able to work with them, and all this and that. Under no circumstances are you to shoot on people that don't want to betray you. And then you go into this game and you basically shoot everything for 22 levels. Ain't that brilliant? Yeah, like I said, never trust them Q2. I mean, I keep saying Q2, but it's Dark Hour. You know what I mean? Yeah, Dark Hour, like I said, was very, very misleading with that. Kind of like Dark Hour Q2 was with its weird pictures on the cover. Dark Hour is pretty much doing that with its story here. It basically misleads you into thinking there's a complex AI system at work. And it builds up a lot of like quality-based stuff using this GUI. I mean, this GUI is probably like one of the best parts of Dark Hour, kind of like Q2. You know, it seems like the loaders are like the best parts of these like add-ons for some reason. They spend a lot of time trying to do the things that loaded up the levels and then didn't focus on the levels themselves. Yeah, the part actually people really care about. Anyway, let's install some levels since we don't have some already. I'll show you guys what that looks like. Here we are. Here's the installation thing. So yeah, basically, the way it works is you get all the levels that you want right here. So like, say like here or something, you get to see what installed levels are here. You get the ability to see the author. You get to see the description. Those descriptions would be a neat thing. Honestly, this is like the only add-on that really has like nice little custom descriptions. It's almost like a lot of like files that you'll find on the internet or whatnot, like custom levels, people often add a little description about them. Um, but usually campaign-based levels and like these add-ons, they don't. And so you end up getting a lot less details about them because of that. So from like a person trying to document this stuff, this is a pretty nice thing because it honestly tells you a lot more about who's doing what or whatnot. And it gives you some nice details. It tells you right here that Alice Bevitsky made Dog Ring. So yeah, ain't that amazing? It gives us the director and the CD-ROM, and it tells us that we can basically install it. We basically can install all the levels or uninstall all the levels. All we need to do is click on this arrow here, and you'll install it, right? Okay, so now it's searching for Quake. Yeah! One problem. We aren't able to specify the directory Quake is in. I have like multiple installations of Quake, all thrown about on my D hard drive, and now it's basically stuck here looking for Quake. You would think it'd be nice if I could actually specify which Quake I wanted to install in, especially since, like I said, I have like 5, 6 installations of Quake all on my hard drive at once. Yeah. And one problem. You're sitting here like an idiot waiting for this thing to install. It basically is sitting here just saying, searching for Quake. And I don't actually know if this works. I've never seen this actually successfully install. So, yeah, the most important part of the loader, actually being able to play a level using the loader doesn't work. Yeah. If you didn't know how to actually manually install levels, you'd be pretty much out of luck here. You'd have just got this loader, thought you could install this level, and then you'd be upset because you just didn't get to actually, play the game. Look at that. Look at the brilliance of this. This is, this is what we came up from Q2. Q2, you basically got everything and whatnot. It was terrible, but you actually got a loader that you could actually, load a level. Look at this. Like I said, it is nice that it has more details and tells us a bit more about the level, who actually created it, all that stuff. But it would actually be nice if it worked. Like us to be able to actually play a level. And even if it does work, it takes a bit of time. Like, we've been sitting here for a little bit of time and it's still not finding Quake. How long do we need to wait for it to find my installation? Would I have to go through this every single time I want to install or uninstall a level? And this way, it doesn't even feel like it'd be worth it if I actually found the Quake, because it takes so long to uninstall or put anything else on there to a point that, like, yeah. So basically, the lesson is, basically, you basically just want to copy over the files. Basically, each one of these files is basically stored in like its own folder for whatever reason. And inside the folder is basically a file. Like I kind of did last time, I'm going to try and like do like a chronological based thing. Dark Hour is a bit weird with that. Because Dark Hour has like some levels that were basically like all done at the same time. And we don't really get like a nice organized thing or so because of all the folders being used for storing everything. It's a very funky way to load everything. Oh, look at that! Dark Hour ran out of memory. Yep, so this is what happens if you actually sit here patiently and wait for Dark Hour. Eventually, it just keeps loading and loading and steals more of your memory and eventually runs out of it. Yeah, I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM and can't load Dark Hour, a loader from 96. Yeah, I think there might be a problem here. This is kind of problematic. But yeah, that's Dark Hour for you. Out of memory. So yeah, basically we're just gonna manually load up each level. I'm gonna like put in my Quake installation area. All you do is go into your id1 folder, and I believe you can just insert it there. I think it's actually id1 maps. You insert it in there. There's like a collection of like every map. If your folder doesn't already exist, all you do is just create the folder maps and then throw whatever you want in there, and it'll basically load as a custom level. So yeah, honestly, that works 1,000 times better than trying to deal with this Dark Hour loader, because this is terrible. This is sheer terrible. I mean, why is this a thing? Why is it having so many problems searching for Quake? Why can't we just specify where Quake is? I mean, I know where my Quake installation is. Why does it need to search for it? It needs to search my entire dual hard drive looking for Quake? And then it uses so much memory that it actually runs out of memory on my computer with 16 gigs, which is a lot more than we had back in 96. So yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, trying to use the Dark Hour levels is quite terrible. And yeah, I think actually if there's really one of the three packs that's like a pain to install the levels for, it probably is Dark Hour because each one of these files is inside a folder. So you basically have to take the file out of the folder, move it over, and you have to do it for every single folder. It's a terrible design. And probably the biggest pain in the butt part of Dark Hour is the fact of the matter that it was so terribly designed for loading everything up. I don't know why they did all this, but yeah, it's a thing. Um, it does keep the README with the file, but that doesn't seem to be much of a problem. Aftershock does something very, very similar to this, but it has the READMEs with the file name. It just keeps the same file name. So that's not really a big problem at all. Um, yeah, this is just terrible. This is just terrible. So yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna load it up and I'll call it a day and I'll show you that way. But yeah, I just wanted to show you a good example of what happens if you actually try and install a level using the Dark Hour loader, and why I have never actually used the Dark Hour loader. I actually haven't used really any of the custom loaders that have come with them. Q2 was mainly just because it was DOS based and I wanted to use like GL Quake. So basically that's a no-no if you're trying to do it through that. It's basically just going to load up DOS Quake on you. So if you want to play like Q2 with anything but DOS Quake, you're going to have to load it up manually anyway. As you see for Dog Ring, or should I say Dark Hour, it doesn't work for even DOSQuake. It doesn't work for anything. I mean, this is terrible. But yeah, I wanted to show you guys how terrible it could get, how broken it could get, and yeah, ain't this brilliant? Anyway, I think this is probably a good example of this. Let's actually get back and let's try and do run levels. Also now I don't have sound for some reason. That's weird. Why don't I have sound? Um, so anyway, now we're here. We basically got to the load levels. See, after you install the levels, what you do is come here. And then you could basically run it like you would in Q2, whereby you could run in single player, you can run in deathmatch, you can run in co-op. A big difference to Dark Hour versus Q2 is the fact of the matter that I believe like both are supposedly supported. Um, Actually, no. That's the interesting thing. Dark Hour has like a bunch of levels that are like single player only, and then a few that are like deathmatch but have like a single player thing in there. So yeah, it's kind of really really weird that it has like run in this mode, because really there's only one mode you really want to play your levels in. And yeah, it's nice that you can select which levels you want to actually have installed. But that seems to be too much of a pain to be worth it. Honestly, I'd just rather have all of them be able to be loaded up at will. Let me just link to my Quake installation and use that to load this up. I'd be fine with that. Honestly, Q2's loader was probably one of its strongest things. It was a simple DOS loader and was pretty terrible in design in comparison to this. It didn't look at all as pretty and didn't have as many options as this, but it worked. At the end of the day, that's one thing you can say about Q2's loader. It worked. This doesn't work. This we can't do the main feature of the purpose of Dark Hour. We can watch the briefing, but that's really about it here. Anyway, that really is the entire loader. Aren't you happy that we just basically wasted our time for nothing? Yeah. Um. So let's see here. What else is on the CD that we really have to talk about? Oh yeah, we also have some random sounds that are in here for some reason. I have no idea why these sounds are here, but sounds. Here's an explosion sound for some reason. That sound! That sound! That sound you recognize? Do you recognize that sound? That's the military one. There's another click! I don't even know. Yeah, what's up with these weird, like, random boinging sounds? They sound like nothing that belong in Quake whatsoever, and yet they're on the Dark Hour CD. I don't really even know. They're there. Yep, they're random things. So yeah, I'm nearly taking almost an hour to show you all this. So I think it'd probably be good to separate this from like the rest. Make it the slow-paced introduction, whereby I just kind of show you a lot of terrible things. Basically starting into Dark Hour. I mean, what a great way to start up. We basically had some hype, and then we broke all that hype by having a totally unfunctional loader. I mean, really, at the end of the day, if your loader is broken, it's not exactly the best way to like make me enthusiastic about the 22 levels or so. But yeah, I will say that they're actually pretty decent when you actually get them loaded up. Um, and next time around, I'll actually play them and showcase some of them, and we'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. And I believe I'll actually be starting up with Dog Ring. So yeah, that level is probably appropriate to have shown you guys, even though it didn't work. But yeah, like I said, a lot of these levels are basically made at the exact same time folder wise. So it's mostly just going to be follow like the order of the folder modification, because the actual files are like even worse and trying to figure out which one came first. And also, the other thing I should mention about Q2 before we get out of here, um, well, Dark Hour. The thing about Dark Hour is, in comparison to Q2 is all disconnected levels that you basically would go through. You'd make it, through like killing through how many enemies, and that'd be the end of the level. Dark Hour is a weird hybrid between that and the original game. Some of its Dark Hours levels don't go to anything else, and some of Dark Hours levels go to another Dark Hour level. In fact, basically, Dark Hour has like a campaign made up of like 9, 10 of the levels. It's almost like half the levels of Dark Hour are a campaign. And then, like, you have other levels in here that aren't part of the campaign and are just like random one offs that work like Q2 did, whereby you just kill everything and call it the end of the level. So yeah, it's a really, really weird hybrid that's like, that really kind of like complements both of them. Um, I don't know why are some of the levels a part of the campaign, but most of them aren't. But there is that. So anyway, I think that really kind of summarizes it all up. I really kind of covered everything in depth, really, I think. Yeah. I think next time around we'll actually get to some of these levels and see what exactly there is to really see. But yeah, most people would view Dark Hour pretty negatively. I actually have a more positive opinion about Dark Hour, specifically because it's a lot better than Q2, and it has single player stuff. At the end of the day, that really is kind of like the two big reasons why I prefer Dark Hour. um, it definitely is better than Q2, which is the other pack we've seen. And I'll explain, like I said, in comparison to like Aftershock, which is the only other pack I've played so far. The thing with Aftershock is that it has a lot more um stuff involved with it. It has like a lot more multiplayer levels, a lot more stuff like that. In fact, it has so many multiplayer levels that you'll be sitting there for a while wondering, when am I actually going to play something single player based? And there's no set rhyme, reason, or organization Aftershock. So you really don't have any way of knowing which ones are single player levels and which ones are not. And so at the end of the day, it really becomes like a mass horde of single player levels, and like only like a couple, well, a mass horde of multiplayer levels. There are only like a couple single player levels. So I believe that's probably the reason why I prefer Dark Hour, because you have a lot of single player content and it is actually like blastable through in like a few minutes. Um, and with single player centric focus, that makes it pretty nice. So, like I said, I think it's a good balance between quality and quantity here in comparison to something like Q2, and even something like Aftershock. But we'll get more to Aftershock when we get to it, and I'll show you guys exactly more kind of what it is, and exactly how it compares to everything else here. Anyway, I think I've rambled for long enough. We're getting almost on the 1 hour mark, so thank you very much all for watching. It has been an adventure, and I shall see you all next time.